3975, 9235, and 9325 South Fifth Avenue, and 3975 East American Avenue. That's the water utility. I also approved a resolution approving a certified survey map for the property at 10751 South Nicholson Avenue. Mr. Mayor.
Any questions?
Just why the one item, the water utilities, was held?
They requested it held.
Okay. Anything else? Item 4A, under new business, item 4A is a plan review of site building and landscaping plans submitted by Nick Wimmer of Wimmer Communities for the proposed Phase 1 of Southfield Addition 2. Addresses as listed on South 13th Street, tax key numbers also as listed. Carrie?
This is a proposal for Phase 1 of a proposed expansion to the Southfield Apartments, a CSM to reorganize and combine the properties highlighted in red on the property, or on the screen rather, will be reviewed at the May 12th Plan Commission meeting. I will give a brief presentation, and then the applicant would also like to give a presentation. The nuts and bolts of the application proposal is for 5 new 8-unit, 2-bedroom apartment buildings, 5 new single-story garage buildings with 40 spaces, extended surface parking of 52 stalls, reconfigured drives, and additional stormwater basins. All proposed buildings will meet the setback requirements of the planned unit development for the property. These are just some of the elevations showing the proposed buildings, which will match the existing buildings. These are the apartments, and these are the garages, which are just slightly different. One is an expansion, and two, actually a couple, will be brand new. We have received updated landscaping plans. However, they did not make it into your packets for this evening. Right now, before I turn it over to the applicant for their presentation, I just wanted to let everybody know that the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Nick Wimmer, Wimmer Communities, for the properties at 6871, 6881, 6881R, 6933, 6939, and 6955 South 13th Street be approved, subject to conditions 1 through 8. Mr. Mayor.
And for all the applicants, when you, if you come up to the mic and speak, make sure you give your name and address before you start doing your presentation. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Nick Wimmer from Wimmer Communities, 5300 South 108th Street, Hales Corners. I'm here today for the final plan approval of Southfield Expansion 2, which adds 40 units and 2.5 acres to the existing 19-acre Southfield apartment community within the City of Oak Creek, Cedar Hills planning area. We came before the Plan Commission in 2013 and were granted approval of a conceptual PUD development plan for Southfield Expansion 2. So as stated, we are now requesting final approval of civil, architectural, landscape, lighting, and signage plans. We would like to begin construction this upcoming summer with immediate construction of all buildings concurrent with our site work, as all the buildings are in close proximity of existing pavement and hydrant service. So I'll begin with a little history of the Southfield Apartments. The site was originally developed as Green Hills Village Apartments in the late 1980s. And was acquired by Wimmer Communities in 1999. At that time, we extensively renovated the project with new exterior elevation modifications, painting, paving, landscaping, and interior finish replacements. Then in 2006, Wimmer Communities acquired just over 8 acres of adjoining land to the north and constructed Southfield Expansion 1. Which was a 64-unit expansion featuring 8 8-unit buildings with private entrances and garage parking. Additionally, a 3,400 square foot community center was constructed featuring management offices, a community room, fitness facilities, and a pool. Wimmer Communities has since purchased 4 of the 5 adjacent parcels along 13th Street with the intention to continue to grow the community. This expansion, highlighted in yellow, fills in the frontage along 13th Street between our north and south entries, and in 2013, a general PUD approval was granted for Southfield Expansion 2. Southfield Expansion 2 adds another 2.5 acres contiguous to and bracketed to existing facilities and consists of 5 8-unit buildings totaling 40 units and the additional garage structures to support them. A future expansion provides a conceptual development plan for the property at 6903 South 13th Street. Once we have acquired it, and will add an additional 3 8-unit buildings totaling 24 units. Building 9 is the only proposed building located at 6903 13th Street, but we have agreed to hold off constructing buildings 8 and 10 to provide a 50-foot setback for additional multifamily buildings. We continue to pursue the acquisition for future inclusion within the Southfield apartment community. So now I'll take a little time to describe the site in some greater detail. Expansion 2 is located on the 4 parcels immediately adjacent to the apartment community on 13th Street. Expansion 2 is bordered by 13th Street to the east, single-family parcels to the south, the City of Milwaukee and industrial use to the north, and the existing Southfield multifamily development to the west. We have also designed Expansion 2 to interconnect with both existing improvements as well as a future phase once we've acquired 6903 13th Street. Southfield Expansion 2 will not require any additional access points along 13th Street, as the entire expansion is connected to the existing project access at Southfield Boulevard to the north and Birdsong Drive to the south. And it is connected through internal private roads and drives. It was important for us to maintain that connectivity with each phase of the second expansion so that all buildings, garages, community facilities, and access points are designed to be connected to one another through those same internal access roads and drives. Environmentally, there is a small wetland within Expansion 2 located at the northwest corner of 13th Street and Birdsong Drive. So we have rotated the orientation of the proposed Building 12 so we don't encroach on that wetland. The wetland was a result of a previous owner attempting to create a landscape pond, which has now been designated as a wetland. And as such, the wetland will be preserved in its entirety with no need to fill any part of it. As for utilities and stormwater management, all stormwater will be contained on site through the use of 2 stormwater retention basins located on the southwest corner of 13th Street and Birdsong Drive and next to the proposed Building 13 on Birdsong Drive. These retention ponds are designed to fulfill stormwater retention requirements for Phase 1 and the future Phase 2 once Phase 2 can be built. We have proposed a new 8-inch sanitary sewer to serve Expansion 2 and will be connected to the sewer main on 13th Street. And we have also proposed a new water main that will connect to the water main running through Expansion 1 that will effectively create a loop within the site. All sewer and water mains will be built in Phase 1 with laterals being added to connect to the 3 conceptually planned future buildings. When the last parcel is acquired, we will complete Southfield with the construction of buildings 8, 9, and 10 and site improvements to support it on that parcel, which will include the interconnection of our parking driveways. The driveway jog put in Phase 1 will be eliminated in order to build the garages supporting Phase 2, leaving us with a fully integrated, connected site upon completion. We will increase the landscaping along 13th Street to create a continuous streetscape across the project with similar plant and tree species as the existing development. To keep with the front door theme we've successfully created at the north entry, we are proposing an entry monument at the south entry. It will be built in the same style as the north entry monument, utilizing brick and project signage, and will feature a landscape bed to solidify the sense of place when entering Southfield. All buildings will feature foundation planting beds consistent with foundation planting beds in our existing project, including trees, shrubs, and signature plant species such as Stella de Oro daylilies and Forester grasses. Site lighting will consist of building and garage-mounted light fixtures at all entries, as well as parking lighting consistent with the lamp heads currently used throughout the project now. Finally, during phase 1 of the project, we will expand a 6-foot-tall wood fence to screen Mr. Rebecki's property along the entirety of his west property line and extending 115 feet along the north and south property lines to the front of his residence. Expansion 2 buildings will very closely resemble Expansion 1 buildings, featuring brick masonry, vinyl siding, a shingled roof, patios, balconies, and private entries. The units themselves also are similar to the units in Expansion 1 at 1,024 and 1,044 square feet, and with all units in Expansion 2 receiving Magic Pack HVAC units. The garage structures will match those in Expansion 1 in exterior and interior dimension and treatments. And we have also maintained over a 2-to-1 parking ratio throughout the project and overall phases. And we'll have a 2.5-to-1 parking ratio upon completion to Expansion 2, essentially providing every apartment with a garage space and a surface space, and with the remainder going to guest parking. Rents will range from $985 to $1,005 per unit at just under $1 per square foot. And we have estimated that phase 1 will add an additional $55,000 in increased tax benefit, and the final future phase will add $32,300 in increased tax benefit, totaling $87,300 in increased tax revenue. And both phases of Expansion 2 will be 100% privately financed, requiring no public assistance. So in conclusion, we believe the expansion will be a great addition to the existing apartment community, to the South 13th Street neighborhood, and to the city of Oak Creek. Therefore, we ask your support of Southfield Expansion Phase 2, Expansion 2, Phase 1, final project approval presented here today. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. So you've talked about the pursuit of that individual property that's on the 13th Street.
Correct.
How far along are you on that? Do you have a timeline that might happen?
We've been in talks with Mr. Rebecki, property owner, and right now he's not ready to relocate, and so we're open to whenever he's ready. We have a standing offer of 120% of the city assessed value.
Okay. I'll open it up to questions from the commission. Commissioner Siepert?
Yeah, I have a question about visitor parking. Do you have adequate parking for people that come? It looks like you're a little crowded as far as your parking and so forth for your residents. So do you have any additional space allocated for visitors?
Upon completion, we'll have 2.5 spaces per unit. So that would be a garage space and a surface space for every apartment unit, and then the remainder going to guest parking.
And handicap parking also?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Dickman.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and say that was a great presentation. I had questions, and you seem to answer most of them, through your presentation. But can I assume then that each apartment has their own garage space?
Correct.
Do they pay extra for that, or is that part of the rent?
That's part of the rent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler.
Can you provide more information about the wall signs and development signs?
The wall signs.
Aren't you?
Oh, on the monument walls, the entry walls. We have our company Wimmer Community logo, as well as the Southfield logo on the brick signs. I believe I provided a
Yeah, there's a drawing in there.
plan.
And there's 10 pages of this thing, and I can't find the sign picture.
I was looking too.
Is it in here?
I saw something.
What page is that?
Small sheet.
Oh, small sheet. Oh, that's why. Got it. There we go.
6 pages in?
Yep, got it. All right, that's matching what you kind of have out there now.
Correct.
And that's all brick?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Commissioner Crowell?
I agree with Commissioner Dickman. A lot of information given to us up front. It's great. I think Commissioner Dickman and I were here when Wimmer took over. I think they've done a great job with that property. Apartments are always a little bit of a complicated approval. I think this one, completely funded by themselves versus some of the other things we're doing in the city is great. Good luck with it.
Yep. Commissioner Chandler?
Can you give more information about the trees in the wetland area?
That was an oversight. There was 2 trees that were placed in the wetland area, which will revise the landscape plans, and they won't be included.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And you cleared the property somewhat recently, right?
Correct.
And I see you put straw over it so it doesn't become a weed factory.
For the time being, we put down just a seed mix so that we would get some growth.
Okay.
But the intention was to start construction this summer.
Yep. And when you say summer, you mean June, July, August?
July.
July, okay.
When do you want to be in?
When do you want to have them completed? When would you like to have them completed?
We'd like to be done with phase 1 within a year.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Chandler?
For the, which one is this? C1.0, or actually showing all the phases. I noticed that some of the buildings are slanted. Can you provide more information on why there's a slant to the buildings, that they're not all straight on?
Are you referring to the buildings along 13th Street?
That is correct. Yes.
It was to break up the property some, so it didn't look like it was just a unanimous row down 13th Street, to give it some dimensioning.
So is it also easier for the parking situation? Or is it just for visual purposes only?
Not necessarily for
Okay.
parking, it was mainly for visual purposes, design of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kresick?
I just want to make one quick comment. First, we've had the opportunity to work with Wimmer before on several projects. It's always gone very well. So obviously, we're looking forward to working with them again. I completely understand that you've got 2 phases and they will connect. The 2 buildings to the east, there is a access road between the buildings and then the 2 parking structures that ends in a dead end. The one thing the fire department would ask, and I think this is solvable, I don't see any additional contingencies needed for the plan commission. The one thing the fire department would ask is that we potentially set up at least a turnaround in that area in the event fire apparatus go down that one-way lane. There are code requirements that say one-way lanes of a certain length do require a fire department-approved turnaround. We certainly can work with you with the understanding that that's going to be a pass-through eventually, but we would like that one item addressed.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Bekavich?
Between the presentation and Mike, he kind of took my question. I guess my question pertained to that same passageway. Are you going to have to take a hydrant line up that way, and are you going to provide for the future buildings with that hydrant? And I don't know if that's up to you or to Mike, so.
The issue of hydrant coverage, I think the most economical solution to that is to take a look at both phases and plan out how the hydrants would be placed. You know, you certainly are going to get certain coverages with your hydrants, and if we can factor in both parcels, I think it would be best for the developer, and that's something we can work with throughout the project.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler?
Gary, can you provide more information about the 16-foot garages and planning was not, or it was scaled incorrectly? I think that's what it said in our notes.
The plans don't adequately scale for the garage buildings. It's just a technical correction that'll be, made a requirement for whenever they resubmit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I thought I saw someone. Yeah, come on up.
Okay, I'm John Rybacki at 6903 South 13th Street, and I own the home with my wife, and we have 2 kids. And I've been there for quite a while, and I've been approached to sell it, and I'm not selling it for right now for various personal reasons and family reasons and whatnot, and I don't want to go real deep in that right at this minute. But I had a few concerns that I wanted to highlight, and one of them is, like, it's a low area. I know he dug a pond there, but there's a lot of water in the area before the pond was dug. And my house, unfortunately, I bought it from someone who situated it lower than I want it. So I'm just trying to make the point that I've got a basement, it's low, and just on the on the northwest corner of my house, I do get water coming in the basement window when there's a good rainfall, and it hadn't been like that before the prior expansion. And I just want to, I appreciate being contacted about these plans, and I'd like to appreciate being further in contact with the review of the grading plan. Most of it seems like it's low where the buildings and stuff are going up to the west, so that makes me happy. But if there's anything that can be done in the process where the water just by the northwest corner of my house is improved or stays the same but doesn't get worse. There used to be a garage and a landlocked piece back there, and there used to be a considerable amount of water around it, and Wimmer's additions put in a garage and actually brought the ground level up. There used to be cattails in that area, and my feeling is some of that water went west, and now it's coming more towards me. And so that was one of my concerns. The other one was I saw that there was a when I saw the erosion control map, there was a temporary soil, possibly a pile on the near 13th Street on the south side of my property, and I don't know how much water rolled off of that, but it's also not the greatest looking thing. I would appreciate if it wasn't there or wasn't there for long. One of my other points was that last time they did improvements or additional apartment building, there was a complete house to the north of me, and it was eventually torn down, but it was still zoned R1 at the time, and it kind of became the construction headquarters with a trailer and porta potties. And Mark Wimmer assured me today that there wouldn't be any trailer there and stuff like that near my property. But my point is that, we're there for a little while yet, and we do have friends and family come by, and I said, I know my garage is more exposed now, and I'd like to look into painting it, even if I'm only there for a year or two. So anything that's kind of a lot of clutter and an eyesore, I appreciate if it wasn't right up to my property line. So I don't know if anyone, or if they can just do whatever during the construction process, but I appreciate most of the equipment if it wasn't right up next to me in clear view and kind of a mess. There was a couple of little mishaps last time with the dumpsters and stuff were there, and once there was noise from the door swinging in the middle of the night on the dumpster, and I went out and wired it shut, and it was there for about 2 years, and I thought, oh, this stuff is only going to be here for a short time, but I don't know. So maybe I can get in touch with them and see if there's a contact person I can talk to once in a while when I have a concern like that. The other thing was when the latest additions were put on, I asked for the fence to the west, and I'm really glad I asked for that, because prior to that, people were using my driveway sometimes as the shortcut back to the apartments, and it's, the snow is cleared in the winter, so it's the logical way to go, and you can tell people, don't do it and whatnot, but it still happens. And so I was wondering if it'd be at all possible to get what is commonly used for front yard fence is to continue the fence. I know there's fence proposed to the front of my house, that's the 6-foot tall stockade fence, but if it could go more east towards the sidewalk with a smaller fence or something that's commonly used in the frontages of properties, I'd really appreciate that because, like I say, you can tell people, you know, stay out of there and everything, but, and I don't want to be the guy who's asking the kids to, you know, stay out, but then if you let them all come in before you know it, it's commonplace. And I also remember when there was construction and stuff placed to the north of me as their kind of like headquarters trailer and whatnot. They took down a split rail fence, which was kind of nice because it was old. But then sometimes construction workers, I don't know, maybe inadvertently or whatever, but they ended up parking like half their car on my lawn because I could see where the wheel ruts were. And I had a berm there at the time, and if the berm wouldn't have been there, I wonder if the whole cars would have been on my front yard. So I'm just wondering if we could maybe get a little more screen out with a little more fencing there. And I just would like to keep in touch with the folks that are doing the grading plan. You know, in general, I mean, you all know that the Wimmers are pretty good neighbors when the thing's all said and done. I mean, you know, they've a lot of times removed my snow, and then I've gone back when the snowplow came through, and I've removed some of theirs and the sidewalk out in front. And so, I mean, but this is the one time in like 2 years that I really get to talking about a lot, and then I don't really see anyone or know who to contact. So I guess those are my main concerns.
Okay, well, thanks for your comments. We can certainly provide contacts, or Carrie can provide contacts for you to have those questions answered. The applicants are certainly here. You've heard his comments. I'm sure that you would, given the Wimmer reputation, I'm sure you'd be willing to work with them. You can make some comments if you like.
Absolutely. There's a number of items Mr. Rebecki touched on, so I'll try to keep it short here. But as to grading, our preliminary grading plan does sheet water away from his property, and we have the stormwater retention basins to maintain that.
Brian, can you confirm that that's the case?
We haven't reviewed the grading plans yet until after Plan Commission approval.
All right.
The top, I think the dirt pile he was referencing on the erosion control, we'll be stripping the site for topsoil and then retaining that topsoil on site until we're ready to lay it before landscaping. So we did designate an area that will be surrounded by silt fence for the time being that would store that topsoil. We're hoping to be in 1 year of construction, so that topsoil would be there for, you know, roughly 9 months. The construction equipment and trailer concern, we won't have a construction trailer for this project, so there will not be one on site, and all equipment will be designated to our construction area within the Phase 1 development area. What else did we have?
Fence?
The fence, right. We can certainly extend that fence some. In talking with Mr. Rebecki, like he had said, we had originally proposed a 6-foot fence along the entire west end of his property line, and then extending 115 feet, which brought you to the front of his residence on the north and south property lines, and we could work with him if.
Yeah, I think we certainly need to pay attention to aesthetics on something like that. I don't know that a tall fence all the way to the street's going to look very good.
Right.
Also, you would actually have to bring it down to 3 feet past where you have it on the plan. We don't allow 6-foot fences in the front setback.
Okay.
So at the front of the garage, though, wouldn't that be sufficient? I mean, how far is he looking for the fence to come all the way to the sidewalk, or?
If possible.
3 feet, though. At 3 feet. feet.
So he could put a 3-foot fence all the way to the, they can't yell from the audience. So he could put they could put a 3-foot fence to the front. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, it won't get out to the sidewalk, because this is a right-of-way line here.
So that's as far
So
as.
on the south side, it could go out to this point, to the right-of-way, and that could be a 3 feet. My suggestion would be if that could be installed sooner rather than later, and before construction, get the fence up.
The intention was to install the fence as soon as we were approved and ready to start construction.
Yeah,
Okay.
the fence would have to be no taller than 3 feet. It would have to be decorative. It would have to follow the fence code.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, Commissioner Johnston?
Answered.
Commissioner Dickman?
2 items that we talked about, I think they're for Kerry probably. You know, we discussed, or they discussed having that turnaround at the end of the street. Do we have to add another condition? Because I looked at it, I don't see anything in there.
All building and fire codes have to be met.
Okay, so that would be that? Okay. And also the fence, we don't have to add that anywhere? That falls under our conditions already? The change?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to point the commission into the one part of the report that discusses the proposed sign. And the reason I do that is because within the code itself, because this is located in a multifamily residential district, the development sign has to be approved by the Plan Commission. And if there are any concerns with it, please let me know right now.
Anyone have a concern with a sign that looks a lot like the other sign that's already there?
No.
No.
Plan Commission has indicated they don't have any concerns. Anything else? Other questions, comments? Motion on 4A.
Kavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans submitted by Nick Wimmer, Wimmer Communities for the properties at 6871, 6881, 6881R, 6933, 6939, 6955 South 13th Street with the following conditions: that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that the stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the engineering department prior to the issuance of permits. 3, that the approval letter/permit from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for planting within a wetlands is submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits, unless the landscape plans are revised to remove the vegetation within the wetlands. 4, that the final lighting plans indicating luminaire type, pole type, color, and height are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to the issuance of building permits. 5, that detailed plans for signage are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 6, that all mechanical equipment is screened from view. 7, that the revised landscape plans are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 8, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility. And 9, that a 3-foot fence be erected around Mr. Rybecki's property up to, from the face of the property to the front right-of-way. Did I get that right, Carrie? How do you want that?
The fence is varying heights. It's taller in the back,
It's
goes up to
6,
3
but-
feet.
But the front right-of-way 3-foot fence would have to be extended.
So that a fence in compliance with the code requirements is installed around the Rebecca property.
As stated.
That
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Is that the whole thing?
Guzekowski at second.
Guzekowski seconds, roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck with your project.
you
Build some
very
nice
much.
buildings. Taxpayers, thank you. All right, moving to 4B is a plan review of site building, landscaping, lighting, and sign plan submitted by Thompson Thrift Development for a proposed 2-tenant retail building on the property at 320 West Town Square Way, 7901 South Delco Drive. Tax key number 813-9048. Applicants are here. Carrie.
The proposal is contained within Drexel Town Square. It's on the property that is highlighted in red on the screen. This is located within the perimeter commercial subdistrict of Drexel Town Square. On the screen now is the general site plan for the parcel and the proposed two-tenant building. We'll start with parking. Parking is provided at 14 to 20 stalls required for the retail portion on the north part of the building here. 43 to 62 stalls would be required for the proposed pet store on the south end here. 74 stalls are wholly contained on the site, with another 10 that cross over this western property boundary right here, although you can see that there are a couple of access points that would be built at the time of construction for access to that lot. The master plans show that this will be a shared parking lot with the proposed C buildings along Main Street. Those buildings are currently being programmed, so the outline of the proposed full parking lot would be in this area here, shared. This meets the minimum requirements of the PUD, which would be 3.5 to 5 stalls per 1,000 gross square feet. There are pedestrian crossings that are identified on the plans. They've been identified with diagonal paint markings, so there's one at the north here that provides the access between the parking lot and the front entrance of the smaller retail area. There's also a pedestrian crossing through the parking lot through a landscape island here to get to the pet store area. That actually has what's called an OOPS station, which is a pet relief area. There's also a pedestrian crossing from the back of the retail building to the sidewalk, the public sidewalk along South Delco Drive. There's also a painted connection through this area down to the sidewalk on West Town Square Way. And at the southern end here, this is the proposed dumpster enclosure location. That is near the single loading dock, which is right here. The loading dock will only service the pet store. It will be screened with 3 foot tall retaining wall as well as vegetation. There are no service areas for the retail store to the north. Deliveries will be made through the main entrance as necessary. The dumpster enclosure itself is 320 square feet with 7 foot tall dark brown burnished block walls, aluminum coping, dark brown Nichi board gates on the front. This will also have some vegetative screening around it. Moving on to the elevations for the building. I apologize that this doesn't really translate well on screen. Essentially, the north elevation, this is what will be seen from Drexel Avenue. This is the smaller retail store with a portion of the larger pet store behind that. This is the southern elevation, which will be seen as you are traveling on West Town Square Way. This, again, is the southern end of the pet store building with the loading dock area right here. This is what the proposed dumpster enclosure details will be. And moving on to the, that's the east elevation here. So this is what will be seen as you drive down South Delco Drive, pet store on the southern end, retail on the northern end. And this is the west view as you will be entering the store from the parking lot. Again, the retail location here and the pet store here, and then the depressed loading dock on the very southern end. I also want to show these elevations to point out that there are several locations that are proposed for wall signs. They are on the east and west elevations. One is for the pet store. This is on the southeast end. Also, you can't really see it here, but this is the proposed location for the sign for the retail store. And then on the west elevation, retail store sign, pet store sign, main sign right above the storefront here. There's also a secondary sign that says grooming that's on the depressed, or actually recessed rather, portion of the building here, and this is the main entrance. There's also a monument sign that has been proposed that is on West Town Square Way. This is actually the model that was approved for Drexel Town Square for the monument signage. You notice that they will have 2 tenants on the proposed monument. There will also be landscaping surrounding that. It will be seen from Town Square Way, as I said. This is the utility plan. I just wanted to bring this up to show you where the locations of the light poles will be. As you can see, there we go. There's a pole here that has 2 luminaires on it, another one down here, and then single luminaires on poles here and 1 on the southern end. There are 6 parking stalls right here. As these locations have been identified, the submitted information shows that they will meet the required specs that were approved as part of the lighting package for Drexel Town Square. In other words, they propose to use the same approved color of black on the poles and luminaires, the Guardco Pure Form luminaires, and also the height of the poles as measured from the base. There will be a 2-foot base, and they are aware that the height of 25-foot max is measured from ground level to the top of the pole. There also are several sconces on the building that you'll see in the renderings later. This is showing where the build to lines are for Drexel Town Square. As you can see, this is the proposed building, and there are build to zones. Actually, it's a mixed landscape and building zone along the north and along the east side. And this is relevant for landscaping purposes. On the screen now are proposed landscaping plans. They generally are in conformance with the requirements of Drexel Town Square's PUD. There's vegetative screening on the north parking area, for the parking area, I apologize, here it is. Also along the south, with a few exceptions, the screening materials are fine. There are a few plant species that have been selected that don't meet the minimum screening height of 3 feet. We've been in discussions with the applicants about revising some of those plants to meet that minimum 3-foot requirement. Also screening for mechanical units, there's I don't think it's shown on this plan, but there is a transformer in this area, I believe, that will be screened by the landscaping here. There are also rooftop mechanicals on the PetSmart building, or the pet store building. The parapets mostly conceal the mechanical units. You can see these here. We have noted, on the plans, the applicants have noted that about 3 to 5 inches of the mechanical units will be above the parapets. So staff has requested that they be screened, not only for sight lines at ground level, but also respecting the sight lines of adjacent apartment buildings. And since we're on the renderings, we'll just walk you through them right now. A single-story building with 2 separate retail spaces, as shown here. The smaller retail on the north will be about 4,017 square feet. Oh, sorry, wrong way. This is looking at the northeast corner, sorry. There's a glass storefront that runs along the length here. Between these dark brown burnished block and stucco above columns. There's also red brick with a decorative band above. This is looking at the southwest corner of the pet store building. This is shown with light and medium beige Nishi-Ha panels, which are these panels up here, and dark brown burnished block on the bottom. This is also a stucco recessed area, again showing where that secondary sign is. There is going to be a canopy above the entrance and some of the storefront on the west side. These right here are actually spandrel windows, then the rest of the windows on this side and above are all clear glazing. Again, this is the location of the dumpsters and the recessed loading dock. Looking at the northwest corner, you can see that there is a wraparound canopy for the retail store, again above the entrance elevation and a portion of the storefront glazing on the north side. And this is, you can see the proposed sconces to be used on both sides of the buildings. There's another sconce here, another one here, and there's more that continue on all sides of the building. Another view from Drexel and the corner of Delco Drive, giving you an idea of what the proposed landscaping looks like as well. Again, red brick building, or red brick on the top with stucco accents, burnished block on the bottom. There is a staff recommendation that the canopy that's used on the northwest corner here also continue on this side. This is a view of the southwest. This is the loading dock area. This is a spandrel window here, just giving some dimension and depth to that area, breaking up the brick bit. Again, some accents with brick, or burnished block, rather. View from the parking lot, this is the western elevation. And this is the north elevation as would be seen from Drexel Avenue. And the view from Delco Drive. And the final image for you this evening, this is the southern elevation, again showing the spandrel, which will basically be hidden slightly behind well, you can't really see it in this picture, but this is actually a 3-foot tall screen fence, or not screen, but retaining wall, rather, for the loading dock, which is right here. This is clear glass, and this is the proposed monument sign here. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by Thompson Thrift Development for the property located at 320 West Town Square Way, also known as 7901 South Delco Drive, subject to conditions 1 through 7. Mr. Mayor.
All right, the applicant and the Drexel Town Square reps are here for questions. Open it up to the commission for comment or questions. Commissioner Chandler.
Staff identified they wanted changes to the sconces. Can you provide more information about that?
No changes to the sconces, just recommendations for adding some where appropriate. If the applicant does not wish to add more sconces, staff is fine with the proposed locations.
And what was the recommendation, to add them?
Just
where?
to add them on
Just-
additional columns throughout the building.
Okay. And there was also a recommendation to add signs to the building. Can you provide more information about that as well?
To add signs to the building?
Versus on the canopy?
Oh, I know what you mean. So the proposed retail store has the proposed signage on what are known as Nichiha panels. The recommendation is that instead of having the Nichiha panels, which looks kind of like siding, to affix the letters directly to the building.
Can you help me understand the difference? Because aren't those panels on the building, or are you saying to change, remove the panels?
Right.
Oh,
So
okay.
if I zoom in here, you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So this right here is actually stucco. You see it on the parapets and around on the other side, right here. This different color here is actually Nichiha's siding. So that's the element that's attached onto the stucco onto which the proposed signage would be affixed. What the recommendation is to remove that panel and just have the letters affixed to the stucco part of the building.
Okay.
Hello, Adam Fisher with Thompson Thrift Development, Indianapolis. Just to speak to that portion real quick, and it may be confusing in the rendering, but the intent of that different material behind the sign was simply as an accent. It is not attached to the stucco. It is in the same plane as the stucco. So if the desire is to get rid of it and just have stucco behind the sign, that's fine. But the sign is attached directly to the building.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Siepert.
I have a question about the dumpster. It just doesn't seem to blend in with the rest of the building. It kind of sticks out, and I would like to see a little better landscaping, or not landscaping, but design of it. You're sticking it right out in the kind of the heart of the Drexel Town Square, and here's this dumpster sticking out. It just doesn't seem to fit that building, or the location, I should say. Is there anything you can do to improve that? That just doesn't set with me.
Can you put up the image that has well, you got it up there. So is there any way here's a dumpster location, right?
Yes.
What about, instead of so this is Drexel Town Square Way here, or whatever it's called? Town Way? Is
Yes.
that that's what this is? So you're talking about maybe aligning it this way?
Well, lining it or blending it in with the loading dock or something, you know what I'm.
What do
getting at?
you access this from?
I think, yeah, if we could look at one of the site plan pages, it might be easier to understand, and that one's fine right there. If you would imagine that part of the reason that we have the paving that extends into the Lot C to the west is for trash pickup, that we would anticipate. I mean, they could certainly enter our if the truck's small enough, they could enter our entrance at that southwest corner there and probably swing right into the dumpster, and then they would back up in front of the building and then leave out the way that they came. Or to make it a little bit more simple, they could come in at the access point further to the west, drive through the parking lot, come down the front of the building, and then access that enclosure, again backing up back in front of the building, and then leaving from our drive cut. I guess as far as the location of it, I mean, it is adequate. I think it's adequately screened with landscaping all the way around it. It's a solid masonry enclosure. It has concrete panel gate accents that align with some of the other materials that we've used on the building. I guess we're just taking up so much of the site with the other improvements. There's little place to put that makes sense. And so again, that's why we have so many plantings around it, to try to help soften that view from the town square street.
All right, Commissioner Siebert's comments are noted. Mr. Seymour?
Just wanted to respond to that, and I think normally I can see your point there, Commissioner Siebert. In this case, I think by reorienting that, you would actually be decreasing the landscape areas and putting additional pavement in there. I believe that staff is comfortable with the orientation and the design of the dumpster enclosure as presented. I just think it'd be, well, I mean, it certainly could be reoriented. I think it would be doing so at the expense of some additional screening there.
Okay.
Well, the comment I have is maybe you could just take and turn that so that it blends in. It just looks like it's kind of sticking out here. And maybe you could put that dumpster kind of on this side, or.
If you were to turn that in, though, you'd have to have the pavement adjacent to that, so you're actually cutting into landscaping that, which I think is counterproductive.
And this is the big green area, right, that we're seeing in our depictions, correct? Yeah. All right.
Well, that's just my comment, and that's the way I feel.
Noted, yeah. Carrie, can you put up the picture with the retail store and the pet thing, whatever that was, the depiction? All right, when I look at this design, first of all, I love the landscaping around it. That's cool. If it looks like that, it's a win. Everything south of the signage, I think, looks okay. Everything north of that looks boring and not very stylistic. It doesn't pop to me. It doesn't look like I would expect things to look on this property. The stuff below it, I'm fine with. You got your awnings or whatever you call them. You got it's broken up by other materials. I like all that stuff. I just think everything north of that I don't like.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
without that accent, just on that point, was mine. If you take that accent down, I think it's even more boring.
Yeah, I don't know what you could
my
do.
point.
Maybe you have to dress up those corners or something. It just looks boring to me.
I mean, that's where I was going with it, Mayor, that we're talking about taking that accent down and putting that right onto the same, to what the building looks like. I think that's even a lesser alternative, just my opinion. We got people look at a lot more of these than I do, but I agree with you, Mayor, and I think we'd be even stepping back.
Yeah. Mr. Dickman.
We've been talking about the dumpster. I realize the way the property's laid out, there aren't any other places for it. But when I look at it, it looks like it's extremely convenient to the pet store, because you can come out through the, to the loading dock, et cetera. But whatever retail store you have, it's pretty far away. I just don't see them using that dumpster. So how would they handle their trash? I don't think they're going to walk all the way down there outside.
Well, they're going to have to, because there's no other place for them to have their own dumpster.
Okay,
and I understand your point, and sometimes it does seem like dumpsters are located farther from one tenant than another, and that certainly is the case in all kinds of developments. But it will not be food. It will not be a restaurant on the north end, so any trash that they may be pulling out more than likely is going to be plastic and paper, that type of stuff. It's not going to be something that they'd have to drag and then leave, drippy stains along the sidewalks or anything like that.
Okay. And then the other point was, and Carrie, it says, in our staff recommendation number 4 about the detailed plans for signage are reviewed and approved either by the Planning Commission or the Director of Community Development. So I guess we got to talk a little bit about that. Do we want to see the signs, or are we comfortable with your department looking at them? So we have to discuss it. That's what I'm saying.
And you're indicating that you probably want to discuss it.
No, I don't want it. I'd like to see the
Okay, all right.
staff could handle it.
I misread you then.
I misread.
So did I.
Mr. Mayor,
Hold on one second.
this is the northeast quarter of that retail building.
Yeah, it looks a little bit better. The corners don't do anything. I think you got to amp it up a bit. That's just me. I could be completely different than everyone else's opinion. All right, Mr. Degner, you have a quick comment?
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. I am not quite sure how we're going to accommodate all the exercise inside of a building of dogs and other animals without. So how do you expect these pets to be able to survive without exercising some way? How is that going to be accomplished?
Who would like to speak to the pet exercise issue? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Boyd with Thompson Thrift Development. Just to clarify, this is a pet supply store. It's not an overnight daycare, doggy daycare type of facility. So that, I think, to address your question, they won't have dogs staying there overnight and won't have a need for play yards.
Is the idea they bring their pets to the pet store? Is that how it works? I don't have a pet, so that's the deal? You bring your pet to the pet store and then they groom them and...
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And they do sell pets, but again, there's not a need to have a play yard like you might see at a doggy daycare.
Okay. Commissioner Correll?
I stepped in on that wall.
Okay. Alderman Guzikowski?
Carrie, could we bring up just the layout of showing Drexel Town Square and the location of everything, please? It was back a few slides. There it is. Just to get my bearings, I'm trying to get, so when you come in, can you point out where the hotel is going to be? Is that the brown? There you go. Okay. And then the pet store is going to be up just to the north of it there? Okay. All right. Few questions on the sign. Can you go back to the signage, please? This is the monument sign. Is there going to be any LED signage on this monument sign, or is it fixed letters? I'm not sure.
You got the answer. Step up and...
Yeah, this may require a little help from Carrie, but we intended to provide the monument sign that has been approved for the development. To my knowledge, that's the extent of the design. So we've not furthered it. If the city has, or if One West Drexel has, I've not seen it yet. So, I mean, it would be similar to the site lighting, that there's a requirement, there's a standard. That would be the plan for this sign as well. So yes, that we do need to actually prepare construction drawings for that sign, whether it's internally lit or has ground lighting, whatever the standard would be for the center would be what we would want to do.
Where are we at with that, Carrie?
So that's not established.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're internally illuminated.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have something to say?
Jerry Frankie, West Park, 301 West Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee. The only reader boards on these will be the monument signs that have been previously approved. Everything else is just a backlit panel, so that their typical corporate logo is lit internally. So there's been no change in that from what was previously presented to the commission.
Is the Drexel Town Square logo on all these signs that will stay?
No. Oh, it is, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just
detail
curious.
there. Sorry.
Go ahead. Do you have
It's
more?
not.
No, that was it. Thanks.
Okay. Alderman Bekavich?
Okay. For what it's worth, if we go back to the facade of the building with the white inlays on, well, for whatever you call it, the paneling, I'd keep it in there. I agree with Pat. It makes it pop. Boy, you put that on stucco, and you may as well just put up a brick building. I mean, it gives it some type of definition, makes it stand out. For all practical purposes, it's a strip mall. It's hard to dress up a strip mall. I think they've done a good job with the awnings. I agree with doing it on the, I guess it would be the east side. I'm trying to get my bearings with this. But again, you have to dress this up. This wasn't intended to be a strip mall type thing. I mean, everybody builds them and has them. We want ours to be a step up. I actually think that's a pretty good rendition there. Regarding the shared parking, if you go back to the layout of Drexeltown Square, I'm not looking to blow up your plan or anything like that, but I don't know what's intended to be directly west of that in those next two buildings, but that is a sea of parking in there, really. And I mean, if you factor that in, that's a lot of parking. It would be nice if those buildings were flipped. I don't know if it went parking lot, building, parking lot, but you know, look at the gap you have between what will be the Chick-fil-A and even Water Street Brewery. That's a lot of real estate and parking, and then you have a lot of real estate between this proposed building and whatever goes on the far west side.
Dan, maybe I can address that. Remember that those are the areas, those are the major shared parking areas, not only for the perimeter commercial, but I mean, actually throughout the development. So by intent, we wanted to make common parking fields there, so it encourages the shared parking as opposed to some of the other more areas that have their private parking fields. So that well, it does, you're right, create some open areas along Drexel Avenue. The intent of the mixed landscaping building zones was to have that uniform landscaping edge that would kind of compensate for that.
I mean, the idea is to, as you drive on streets, wherever you are, internal or external, you're seeing buildings, not parking lots, right? Isn't that kind of the idea?
For the most part, or else, again, that consistent landscape edge to the parking field.
I totally understand, and again, I ain't looking to change it. I'm just saying, I'm seeing more parking lot than I'm seeing building. It almost seems like somewhere along the line, maybe you could have squeezed another building out of it. I don't know. Hard to say on the positioning of the buildings.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I think the difficult thing, Commissioner Bukevich, is that we don't know what those buildings on the west side are going to look like yet.
Right.
That's just a placeholder, for lack of a better term.
I understand.
And again, you know, what we like is that, you know, you can now visit all of the points on that triangle, and in fact, on the other side of Main Street, without moving your car. And that's why we are trying to combine the parking to the best of our
I
ability.
get it. I mean, they kind of do that in Franklin, where they had what was the Jewel, and now it's Dunham's, and there's Home Depot. But very seldom do I ever see anybody walk those parking lots. They pretty much jump in because they're pretty vast expanses. It happens, and I'm not looking to blow it up. It's just, say that business to the west turns out to be something small. Will we need all that shared parking? Or, you know, because we're not going to do another CSM to split that lot.
Right, and we don't want it to be small. We have to hit value increments for the TIF district. We want to have coverage, so we'll wait for the right user rather than build the wrong building.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Commissioner Carrillo.
I have a question in regards to, or just an observation. If do we have a name for the little park in front of City Hall? Just Park Square, whatever.
Well, Drexel Town Square, I guess.
But
Public
that's
Square.
the
yeah.
public square. I think if we were in the public square, the sight line might be right to the dumpster. And on that corner of that building, it would be to the loading dock and the dumpster is the sight line from our beautiful new park. So I'm wondering if there's something we can do, like we had talked about changing the location of that, or.
If I may, and that's a good observation. However, given the couple of things, the distance, the landscape screening that's there, the materials of the enclosure themselves, which are masonry, and the fact that it's really going to be framed by some additional buildings, both of which are pretty significant in scale and height. I don't believe that the dumpster enclosure will become a focus for one site from the town square itself proper.
Yeah, the scale of this property is something you have to be out there to feel.
Right.
It's pretty far away. I mean, you could maybe see something, but I don't think it would be a prominent feature that you would notice, but I could be wrong.
Okay, just making that observation.
Okay, Commissioner Johnston?
One of the comments that Carrie had, Carrie, if you can pull up the northwest corner of the building. Talk about bringing the canopy, wrapping that around that north side, and continuing that on the west side. Do we want to discuss that at all, or is that an option on the?
Again,
On the
I
floor?
think it dresses it up. I think it gives it some distinction. I think the mayor made that point also.
Do you want it to wrap all the way around to the east side of the building? I guess my only concern with it would be that somebody would feel that the east side of the building would be the front of the store and go to their temporary back door, per se.
So where is this looking at from?
This is the west side.
Is there a sidewalk there
Yeah,
on the east?
there is a
side?
sidewalk on the other side.
Let's show us the east side then. It is boring without the.
It is, but if you make this look like a storefront on this side as well, you could have somebody walking on the sidewalk and trying to get into the door that's right there.
And well, I think that might be the case. I don't think that's a compelling reason to not do it. I think that you want to make the pedestrian experience, especially in Jackson Town Square, such that I mean, by design, it should look like a storefront. And I mean, if you're walking in from the bus line, what have you, and that's the case, I mean, there is a sidewalk which will direct you right to the customer entrance.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Chandler?
Is the applicant okay with the mechanicals being completely covered?
Have to be.
Yes, and we believe that they already are. While it's true that a couple of the units would actually extend above the parapet between 3 to 5 inches, you're only going to see that if you're 25 feet tall. You have to be more than 1,000 feet away in any direction of the building before your eye would even pick up the fact that there is something above the parapet, and at that point, you'd be hard pressed to even understand what it is. For instance, the face of the Meyer building is approximately 550 feet south of the south building line, so you'd have to be a whole nother Meyer building away before you could even pick up on those couple of inches.
And I think that the comment was directed more towards some consideration and acknowledgement that there will be residential units at 2, 3, and 4 stories to the, as far as the hotel is concerned, and as far as the Main Street buildings are concerned. So it's not, while the code speaks primarily to line of sight from grade, there are some special circumstances there that if there was a cost-effective design solution to take that into account, we would certainly encourage them to take a look at that. And in fact, I think that there probably is something that can be done.
All right, so you're dressing up a roof because there's tall buildings in the vicinity.
Exactly.
Okay, we get that.
One additional question. It was noted that staff recommended extending the brick versus having siding. Can you provide more information on that?
Sure. It was a staff recommendation, kind of going along with the mayor's comments about this area here with the stucco. That recommendation is really just up for plan commission consideration. It was an idea. It's not necessarily the way to go. Staff doesn't have too much of a problem with having the retail store have the two types of building material at the top here, stucco versus brick. In fact, when we put the brick on this side and even extended the brick and the burnished block, it did start to make the building look fairly heavy. So staff is not very convinced that brick is the way to go with this, but it was just an idea of maybe going along with what the mayor and Alderman Bukevich were saying about dressing it up.
Now,
You know, one of the problems here is it says retail store, and there's nothing exciting about something that just says that. I mean, if it had like a logo or.
Generics.
Yeah, so you can't get excited about that. So.
No.
And just for clarity, my interpretation was adding brick in between the two stores, not at the top of the store.
I think as written, it was extending the brick as along the north side and along the east so that it would be one continuous kind of brick feature. Also kind of looking at building materials, making things a little bit more permanent, giving that feeling. But again, once we started playing around with the building itself, it did start to feel heavy.
Thank you.
Alderman Bekavich.
I guess I'm going to put it out there regarding the detailed plans for the signage. Is that something we'd like to see come back to commission?
Yes.
Lots of yeses on this side, lots of yeses on that side.
Okay, just for
Yeses
future
win.
reference in a moment. Thank you.
Okay. And
Can I
Commissioner,
ask a question on that?
yeah,
Is that for the monument sign as well, or just the walls, the wall signs for the tenants?
well, the monument signs are
Monument
fixed.
signs
Monument sign, we're good?
So
Yeah.
that would just
All right.
be the tenants.
Yeah.
I want to see the others.
Yeah, that's fine.
Commissioner Sieber, you're up.
Yeah, I just have one other question. Landscaping all along Drexel, are we going to be consistent with it, or will it be varied for each?
Why don't you address that, because everybody asks that all the time.
Absolutely. One of the roles that we're doing as part of this, there's pending some amendments to the Drexel PUD that are be coming forward to the Plan Commission shortly. As part of that, we had a landscape guideline document for those perimeter areas along Drexel Avenue, along Howell Avenue, so that we have some common themes emerging, and that we don't have 5 or 6 individual landscape designs along those areas. So absolutely, Commissioner Siepert, it is a design that sets that edge with multiple hedgerows or different layers of landscaping, perennial grasses, flowers, as well as street trees. So yes, there will be a common theme to that.
Thank you.
Alderman Bekavich.
As long as we're on Drexel, I thought in my reading somewhere there will be no access from Drexel Avenue due to the grading, the grade. There won't be steps coming from the sidewalk of Drexel up to the parking lots. Was that this item, or was it a different item I read?
And maybe Brian, you can answer, but I think this far west, I think the grade flattens out.
That's correct.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, over on the east side of the development, there's a big grade break between the parking lot and the sidewalk where we'd need to have
Oh,
a
you know
ramp.
what? It's on the next one.
Yep.
Never mind. Wrong item.
Okay. Commissioner Chandler.
For the parking lot off of Drexel, will there be enough to mask this huge parking lot? What will be there?
The landscape plan calls for I believe it's a single row of hedges there. A lot of it depends on what easements are adjacent to the parking lot, because there are a number of easements which impact upon the placement of obviously structures and landscaping, and certain easements allow certain things within them. In this case, it is showing a single row of, and forgive me, I don't know the exact species there, but would establish a 3-foot minimum visual screen between the parking lot and the sidewalk and ultimately Drexel Avenue. In most cases, that would be kind of an offset with a second row of those with perennial grasses and some seasonal color to that, as well as one tree, perimeter parking lot tree, for every 50 feet along there. So yes, we feel that it appropriately addresses the edge condition that we're looking to set for the parking lot along Drexel.
So you'll still be able to see the massive parking lot drive?
You'll be able to see the parking lot. I guess I wouldn't characterize it as massive.
Okay.
It fits the buildings that are around it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dickman.
I just wanted to talk about item 6, or I'm sorry, condition number 6. Carrie, we talked about the mechanical equipment, and the applicant gave his view that 3 to 5 inches you could only be seen from a long distance away. Do you feel comfortable not screening it totally, or after our discussion?
The applicant and I have had some discussions about this, and one of the potential options is to make sure that the mechanical units themselves are painted such that they don't reflect the glare from the sun into those other buildings. That's one option. Another option is to look at whether or not some kind of screening could go around the units themselves where they go above the parapets. The parapets themselves probably cannot raise any more than they are right now. But those are some options that we've been bandying about. I think probably painting the units themselves is where we last talked about being the most, you're looking at me as if that's not right. My understanding was that that might be the most feasible option.
Yeah, no, I was just waiting to see what adjective you use, that's all.
Then actually, item 6, the way it is written, is adequate because the painting would be discussed as a form of screening, even though it really isn't a.
I believe it would.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bekavich.
I was just gonna weigh in, but Carrie's voice of reason, she's absolutely correct. Painting's the way to go. You put screening up there, it deteriorates, it adds more height. It just, go with the paint and be done. We're talking a couple inches here. I don't think it's a big deal.
Carrie, voice of reason. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, motion on 4B.
Bekavich will make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the site and building plans submitted by Thompson Thrift Development for the property located at 320 West Town Square Way, 7901 South Delco Drive, with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that the revised landscape plans are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 3, that the final lighting plans indicating luminaire type, pole type, color, and height are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to the issuance of building permits. 4, that detailed plans for the signage are reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. 5, that plans addressing grading, draining, and stormwater quality, including the use of stormwater best management practices, be approved by the city engineer prior to the issuance of building permits. 6, that all mechanical equipment is screened from view. Details for screening the rooftop mechanicals shall be submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. And 7, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Before there's a second, can I ask for a little bit of clarification from the Plan Commission as to what you'd like to do on the northwest corner for the suggestion of the canopy as well as building materials?
I'd like to see the canopy go around. but-
Extend the canopy and keep the panels?
Okay. Condition 8,
that-
we'd like to see the canopy extended to
East elevation it is?
the east elevation.
So wrap around the
Wrap
corner?
around.
A
Yes, correct.
wraparound.
Yeah, it's been-
And also that an accent
Panels are kept?
panels are retained within the drawing.
I don't think you need to be, you don't need to say that, it's been proposed. I just wanted to know if any of the building materials were going to be changed.
I don't know.
That's good.
So
with
as
you. Good with
proposed?
us.
Okay, so the addition of a canopy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
as proposed.
Need a second?
Dickman seconds.
Commissioner Dickman seconds, roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Furlow, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right,
Thank you.
next up. All right, moving to 4C, we are talking about a site building, landscaping, and lighting plan submitted by Matthew Lyons, Azura Living LLC for Phase 1 of a CBRF on the property at 8860 South Mayhew Drive, tax key number to be determined. Voice of reason, Carrie.
I will give a brief presentation as the applicant also has a presentation to give to the Plan Commission. So this is the property located on Mayhew Drive. Plan Commissioners will recall that a conditional use permit was granted for the CBRF in January of this year, approved by the Plan Commission in November of last year. Also, a CSM was approved by the Plan Commission in October of last year and approved by the Council in November. This is for Phase 1 of the proposed two-phase CBRF. This is a site plan showing you the outline of the building on the property itself. It is a single-story, 28,900 square foot building with 40 resident rooms and some additional living areas. This meets all required setbacks as proposed. Access will be off of Mayhew Drive via the existing access for the condominium building. There are 43 stalls that are provided. This is in compliance with the code for nursing homes, which was also approved in the conditions and restrictions. Only 33 stalls would have been required. They're providing some extra Setbacks for the parking are also met in the proposed plans. What's on the screen before you, I apologize that it's sort of dark. These are the proposed landscaping plans. There is an existing chain link fence that is along the rear property or the east property line here. I think it also extends to the corner. This is proposed to be removed and replaced with a 6-foot-tall decorative aluminum fence. This will also include vegetative screening. There will be 2 gates approximately here and here that'll control access to the rear of the building. Residents will actually be able to access these walking paths, gardens. There's some seating areas at each of the corners. They'll be accessing that through the building itself. So the gates are actually to make sure that there's security there. There is one monument sign that is proposed. The approximate location is right here. It will be about 10 feet off of the the right-of-way line there. That's in compliance with the code requirement. As with the previous application, the previous application that that was for the Southfield agenda item. Multifamily residential development signs are subject to Plan Commission review for appropriate size and compatibility with the neighborhood. The applicant has indicated their desire to actually have the sign be probably less than what the code allows, a maximum height of 6 feet and 48 square feet per side for a total of 96 square feet. So the Plan Commission is asked to make a determination as to whether that signage in compliance with the code would be appropriate for the residential use of the property. And these are the elevations, the renderings of the building itself, residential in nature. You'll see that they are proposing to use some stone accents, also some white siding and some, I believe it's gray, yes, gray asphalt shingles and siding. I'm sorry, it's beige fiber cement siding and architectural shingles for the remainder of the roof. There are 2 standing seam metal roofing structures on either corner here over the patio area. Fiber cement as a primary building material requires a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission. A minimum of 65% of the surface of the total exterior wall area of multifamily residential buildings must be brick or decorative masonry per code. It'll be up to the Plan Commission to determine whether or not the proposed building using the fiber cement siding meets that requirement for masonry. Staff does recommend approval. A dumpster enclosure to be 7 feet tall with tan split face CMU walls and tan metal gates to match the color of the stone on the building is proposed on the southern end. So if I bring this up, you should be able to see it. It will also be screened with some vegetation. Location of the dumpster enclosure is right here. Mechanical plans are currently being finalized. However, the applicant is aware and has indicated their willingness to screen all the units in compliance with code requirements. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Matthew Lyons, Azura Living, for the property at 8860 South Mayhew Drive, subject to conditions 1 through 7. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Lyons for his presentation.
His brief presentation?
Very much so. As brief as you'd like. We just had some further renderings that we wanted to show as well. So this is just a further rendering beyond the elevations that were shown that give some context to what the building.
Give your name and address for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my fault. I should have asked you.
3901 South Wadsworth Boulevard, Denver, Colorado. So, you know, as Carrie mentioned, the intent here is to have about 50% of the building is a hardy siding that has a 30-year warranty. It's actually a pre-painted material that has a 15-year warranty on the color itself. So it is quite a permanent type of siding material. The reason for that is the intent of our building as a memory care provider. You all may remember and recall some presentations that we've given in the past about our business. We'd like to provide a very residential type of environment for our residents. We feel that this type of siding and the look of this building are designed to give that residential appearance and kind of promote our business plan. The intent of the design was to look almost like several houses, kind of like a row house type of image was the design intent, with the elevated portions on the corners in the center and some kind of, and the gables in between as well. So that was the intent and the reason for some of the siding materials. If you want to go on to the next slide. These are just some kind of contextual photos that we've pulled from in terms of color and material. The bottom picture on the right is the office building and daycare. It's just a block over here that has a similar tan color with stone accent. So we're trying to mimic that look in our building as well, with providing a little bit more of that residential feel. You can go on to the next slide. Again, here is some kind of the residential feel. You'll notice that the gables with the kind of wraparound on the bottoms are very similar contextually to the elevations that we have, and the stone with the lap siding again. And so that going into the elevations here, again, you can kind of see the mimicking of those, the gables here. We've got a large chapel type of elevation in the courtyard, and so that's actually the common area of the building that will have kind of the ability for the way that the building is set up, I guess, is there's two neighborhoods of 22 units, and then the central area will be common area, allow the residents to get out of their house, quote unquote, into this common area. We'll have church services, kind of social events, activities, that sort of thing that'll happen in there. And then the residents will have access from the common living areas in each neighborhood, from the corners of the building. That'll access out to the courtyard, and then there'll also be access out through this chapel area. You can go on to the next slide. This is a close-up rendering of the front of the building. Pretty extensive landscaping that meets both Azura's requirements for landscaping with the front of the building and the courtyard, giving some extensive outdoor livable area for the residents, and then providing that same landscaping throughout the rest of the site. It does meet the code requirements as far as the screening and number of plantings and that sort of thing. Go ahead, next slide. Oh, okay. So that's the intent, the short and sweet version. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Nice looking building. Commissioner Curral.
Yeah, I agree. Nice looking building. My only question, we like to build parking lots. It's more than what we needed. Do we need all the spots? I mean, it's more a question for yourself. I see you proposed about another dozen.
To clarify, so in the CUP, we actually were approved a reduction in total required parking for the two-phase building. And so the parking is per nursing home requirements, which is one parking stall per 3 beds, plus the maximum or the peak shift parking for staff. So the parking, there's actually an additional 12 stalls that are shared parking. I don't have the pointer.
12 down the side.
I'm sorry?
There's 12 down on the bottom here?
Yeah, so if you mirror that, so right here, there would actually be a shared parking agreement with the condo, the office condo building to the south of us.
Okay. I mean, if you feel you need it, that's fine. I just want to, when I see it's over.
So, yeah, so essentially the reason that it's over right now is that shared parking plus what we have meets the nursing home requirement for the entire 66 unit two-phase development. So we're over parked now with the anticipation of that second phase, and we're building all of the parking up front.
Got it.
So that's not our requirement, that's a nursing home requirement.
It's the nursing home zoning requirement.
But ultimately
Nursing
with
home
the
code
second phase,
requirement.
we're back where we need to be.
Correct, and it was reduced from the multifamily traditional code requirement.
Yeah, I remember something about that.
Right, so the parking ratio is based on nursing home use rather than multifamily residential use as part of the PU, or the conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Siepert?
Yeah, I have a question for the fire department. With the addition of a second phase, are you going to have any problems getting around and covering the backside of that building?
Possibly, yes. As part of meeting the fire code requirements, we would encourage them I'd like to sit down with them and kind of discuss the second phase, the implementation of the second phase, and then access around the building. Now, the code requirements for a fully sprinklered structure, which is to be a fully sprinklered structure, do give certain allowances for distances from access roads and hydrant placement. Now, those can be very tricky. And with that second phase coming into play, I would certainly encourage early discussion on how we can make that work. With phase one, you've got relatively adequate access along the west side and then the south side of the structure. Where we might need to make some modifications is along that south side heading east. You've got a shared driveway, which kind of complicates things slightly, but it does allow for some better access along that side of the building. And potentially the turnaround. Whenever you have one-way roads, you run into turnaround issues for the code, with the previous applicant, code specifies turnarounds with those. Generally, like I said, it's adequate access, but I would certainly encourage early discussions now, planning for phase two.
Okay, Alderman Guzikowski.
Paul, I just wanted to say it's a really good-looking building, a nice design. I think it complements the city well, so you guys should be proud of the work you did. In fire, I was going to hit on, so that's been covered. Signage. You said you're reducing your sign size? Is that what
The
I heard?
code allowance is a 6-foot tall sign and then 46 square foot per side, not to exceed 96 feet. Did I get that right?
I think it, roughly, yes.
Roughly. So we plan on having a monument side that'll essentially mimic the look of the building with the stone accent. And then I'll have a Zura Memory Care logo on there. We're not a retail type of use, so we don't go overboard with our logos. It'll probably be somewhat triangular so that you can see the logo from either side, but we will definitely stay within the code requirements there. We don't have the full monument sign developed quite yet to have imagery, but you know, if approved, I believe it would just need approval from staff in order to get built.
Kudos to you on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's also a nice building designed for that location. It kind of, I think it's going to blend in nicely.
It'll give the fire station competition.
Yeah. Commissioner Johnston.
Just a question about emergency access. Looking at this, it appears that everything for emergency access will be through the front door. Ambulance needs to come. It's all through the front door. I'm sure you guys can get in if you need to. Any issues with that?
Ambulance access tends to be a function of the facility. Many facilities would request that the ambulance access is at the backside of the structure. For lack of a better term, it's bad for business to have an ambulance parked in front of your structure. The ambulance access up front is acceptable to us. It does provide easy in, easy out of the structure. And most of the time when we do enter a building for patient care, we're meeting with staff anyways. Most of the time the staff's located at the front of the building. So from an ambulance access perspective, no issues. The access problems tend to become a little bit more complicated for fire apparatus. How much clearance to the north between your building and the parking lot for the clinic?
I don't know if you can zoom in on the plan. I don't know if I believe it's we hit the setback, and then I believe they have their setbacks to the parking lot. I don't have that distance right off the top of my head. So it looks like, actually, if you scroll up a little bit more.
Go back to where you were. There you go.
So it looks like we're over 15 feet. Looks like slightly over 15 feet. You can see the inside dash line is 15 foot from the property line. And then I don't know how long or how much clearance there is from the parking lot.
And that would be a consideration for us also. That is potentially, in an emergency situation, another access point that could be considered for the fire department. Looking at the plans, I believe that a strategy to improve access for emergency services would take place along the south, looping back up along the northeast portion of the building. And certainly, that's why I encourage it with the discussion about the Phase 2 addition and what we can do to get an access road in there. Certainly your evacuation plan is going to have a bearing on that, where you intend to evacuate the residents, because that would determine the lighting needs for that portion of the structure, any collection area for the patients, and the lighting associated with that. So yeah, yes, I do acknowledge that emergency access issue. I think it's a solvable problem, but it does complicate matters.
So the short answer is the ambulance goes to the front.
Yes.
Okay.
The loading docks on the south side, that's just for in-house operations?
Yeah, and they're not docks, they're just essentially designated loading areas. And then we'll have our commercial kitchen will actually be on the southwest corner. And so there'll be direct access into the commercial kitchen for dry food storage and food storage, that sort of thing.
Okay. Leading into that, I'm thinking more of the funeral director side too, access to the building, if that's all out through the front door.
Buzzkill.
Yeah, it is.
Any other questions? All right, now motion on 4C.
Carrie?
Just,
You can just talk, you don't have to.
I had to wait for the mic to come on. Just a question, as with the Southfield development, because it is the monument sign for a residential portion of the city, the Plan Commission is to make a decision as to whether or not the proposal is meeting the requirements, and whether or not the proposal is in keeping with the nature of the neighborhood. From what I hear, the Plan Commission seems to be fine with the resident, or the monument sign that the applicant is pursuing.
Yes.
It seems like the applicant is really aware of what the surroundings of this building are, so I'm confident, along with her staff, that you'll find a sign solution that works aesthetically.
So the motion would leave it to staff.
Right.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be my
Right.
suggestion.
Yeah.
And then finally, whether or not the proposed building materials with a 3/4 majority would satisfy for the masonry requirement,
Depend on the vote.
as recommended by staff.
Okay.
Yes.
If we approve the conditions as is it assumed that the 3/4 majority is accepted or passed?
3/4 majority of a yes vote is an approval of the building materials, yes.
Okay.
All right, you good?
Correll moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Matthew Lyons, Azura Living, for the property at 8860 South Mayhew Drive with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the engineering department prior to issuance of permits. 3, that final lighting plans indicating luminaire type, pole type, color, and height are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to the issuance of building permits. 4, that detailed plans for the monument sign are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 5, that all mechanical equipment is screened from view. Screening details shall be submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. 6, that revised landscaping plans are submitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the issuance of building permits. And 7, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Seifert seconds.
Seifert seconds, roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David Chai.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Correll, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, good luck.
Thank you. And just as a side note too, we do plan on being under construction by late July, early August.
Awesome.
Great.
That's my next
Great. Good luck.
Do it after the 4th of July. That's where everybody sits over there.
Can I ask a clarification?
Thanks for coming in.
Wait, he's got
On
a
the
question.
landscape plan revisions to be submitted, can you clarify what that is? I believe we submitted a,
I think that condition was written prior to our discussion.
gotcha, okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, final item of the evening is sign plan review submitted by Paul Rodermacher, Sign Me Up of Wisconsin LLC for the Water Street Brewery building located at 140 West Town Square Way, tax key number 813-9043-000. Carrie.
This is for the Water Street Brewery at the corner of Howell and Drexel, as noted in the red on your screen. This is the sign plan review for the proposed building. So what they are proposing is to have several signs on all elevations. The sign plan review is required to be reviewed by the Plan Commission as a condition of prior site plan review approval. Per the Drexel Town Square Plan Unit Development, one primary entry sign is allowed on the west and south entrances and either facing Howell or Drexel Avenue. The plans as shown have signage on all sides. This is showing the east and the west elevations. So this is showing interior to the parking lot on the west and along Howell Avenue on the east. These are raceway channel letters, each 66 square feet in total. You will note that on the west elevation, this is an entrance here. So this is an entrance elevation on this side. This is showing the north and south elevations. The north elevation has both a sign, you can't really see that very well, but it has this raceway sign in this location. There's also two logos on either side of the silo. And then on the south elevation, this is another entrance elevation. There's a sign along the top here. And this gives you a little bit more detail about the proposed signage. What staff recommends is that the Plan Commission approve the signs on the west, south, and east elevations. Due to the wording in the planned unit development, the number of allowed signs is met on those three elevations. The excess signage on the north would require a variance. So we are recommending that the applicant pursue that avenue to get those signs on the north. So the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign plan submitted by Paul Rodemacher for Water Street Brewery at 140 West Town Square Way, subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Mayor.
Has the applicant been notified that the signs on the north facade were not?
Yes.
Curious what his reaction was.
Any contact with him since that email was sent, so I couldn't tell you.
All right, so we sent an email. Yes, Mr. Degner.
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. As I'm coming along Drexel Avenue, going west, it hits me in the face. And I was always under the impression that our signage had a particular square footage based on that type of wall sign and so on. This type of sign looks like it extends across the entire face. Maybe correct me that way, but to me, it's incongruous.
Carrie, can you talk a little bit about the dimensions of the signage?
The dimensions of the sign, the raceway sign on the north elevation, as seen from Drexel Avenue, is proposed to be 44.7 square feet. Each of the logos on the tank are proposed to be about 30 square feet. So that's a 6 foot by 6 foot, roughly, round diameter, round logo on the east and west sides of the tank. Now, if we go to the west elevation, that signage is proposed to be 66 square feet as on the east. So the full Water Street Brewery logo on the east and the west will be 66 square feet. And then on the south elevation, the smaller sign is proposed to be 29.3 square feet. And again, on the north elevation, the channel letters are 44.7 square feet. Code requirements just for signage elsewhere in the city show a maximum of 100 square feet for a wall sign.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Bekavich.
I want to throw my comments in. This really is what I'd consider a true corner anchor tenant. It's kind of setting the tone for the entire project, so to speak, on that outer perimeter. I fully support the signs. I hope he goes for the variance on the north. Again, that little bit on the north there, I think, really gives it the look we're looking for there. They're looking for that old industrial look. They used to have signage all over the buildings if you go back, and that's what they're shooting for. So, again, I'll fully support this, and I do hope he goes for his variance, and I hope he gets it.
Couldn't agree more. Commissioner Dickman?
I support all those comments. One thing I did know, it's a very small thing, but on the logo sign, which is on the grain tower or tank, whatever you call it, what I really like where it says Water Street Brewery and it says Oak Creek. Very seldom do you ever see the word Oak Creek when they have signs. I just thought it just says this is ours.
Yeah, it was part of the branding of this restaurant at that location in that specific spot on the corner. That was something that they did that we asked them to do. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Commissioner Chandler.
I have a recommendation that we hold this, because I know in the past, we said if the applicant wasn't here, then we wouldn't vote on the item.
Are there any specific questions that you have which would preclude you from making a decision on this? I mean, if there are, certainly I can try to address those, or else if they are of such a substantial nature that we need to have their sign guy here, their applicant here, I would certainly advise them of that as well. But if you are comfortable with the material as presented, again, totally your discretion. But I don't know that the fact that someone's here in and of itself is not a rationale for holding this.
In the past, we've had this discussion, Mayor, not that long ago, where we held a different one. I'm comfortable it's here, Doug, I get it, but I thought we had the discussion that we were to direct applicants to have some representation at the meeting. That's my recollection of the last conversation.
Is the applicant reachable by phone?
Every applicant is directed to have a representative present. However, I think the timing of this was probably, it moved rather quickly to have this approval on here for this agenda item. I have been in contact with Jeff Stowe, who's the architect on the project, and these have always been the signs that were proposed for the building.
I mean, if there's a reason that we knew that and it went quickly and it comes up, I mean, that can happen. I'm just saying over a number of years, we've had that precedent.
I guess I would just straw poll the Plan Commission. Who beyond Commissioner Chandler wants to hold the item?
Based on Kerry's comments, I'd say no, we can vote on it.
All right.
Could I just ask this?
Go ahead.
Is there any way that he doesn't have to go for a variance if we bring him back and we can somehow work through the signage that he's looking for the north side of the building can all be included in approve or not approved?
Yeah, we looked at this extensively, trying to see what we could do in order to make it work within the confines of the planned unit development. Unfortunately, we couldn't find a solution to that. The PUD is actually quite specific about what is allowed. There are no flag signs, so that's not something that we could say, okay, well, these are flag signs as opposed to primary signage. It was something that we looked at extensively, and this was the solution.
Okay.
It's okay.
Did I still have a buzz in, Steve?
Yeah, you press. Go ahead.
Okay. Is that a go?
Go ahead.
The other commissioners, I agree with. I mean, I think this is definitely the most, if not the only unique thing in this development that I've seen, and the signage is pretty integral to what they're doing. So I fully support the signage on this compared to the other things we're looking at.
Yeah.
I just wish he was here.
Yeah, I agree.
Commissioner Dickman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I gave all my comments ready. Thank you.
Alderman Guzikowski.
I already spoke, thanks.
Alderman Bakavich.
I just want to address Commissioner Chandler's concerns. I do agree with you, and we did say the applicant should be here, and I don't know what the timeline was for getting this on the agenda that they're not here, but I do have experience with sign shops that make these custom signs, and if you've looked at the pace that they're moving on Water Street Brewery, it's moving at a very good clip, and it's looking like it's gonna be done in June. All these signs are custom-made per building. This is nothing like a Target or McDonald's where they're mass producing them, because each building will have a different dimension. If you go downtown, the building's more squished together or what have you, or has a different look. So really, they have to get this into production. To push them back 2 weeks could actually hold up not so much your opening, but the finishing of it. So I really don't see the need to hold it up on this particular level, although I do agree with you, the applicant should be here, but I will support putting it through this time.
Commissioner Chandler?
So since the recommendation is just on 3 sides, is the applicant okay if we vote for all 3 sides, or what is their alternative plan?
Appeal.
As Doug mentioned earlier, we did send this information to the applicant. We have not heard a response back. If the Plan Commission approves the 3 sides as recommended by staff in the report, their option is to come back for a variance on the north side. That's, again, that was the only solution that we were able to come up with.
Would that be in 2 weeks?
No. We have to warn it in accordance with
What would the time frame be?
probably 4 weeks.
Okay.
And is there any feedback prior to that was provided on why they wanted all 4 sides?
Probably the design of the building, and again, this was what was presented at all times. I will defer to Doug.
Correct. Yeah, given the unique nature of this and the kind of the anchoring effect of that along the major thoroughfares, they felt that 2 primary signs were warranted, and in addition to the entrance signs that are on both the west and south elevation.
In addition to the signs that are on the, what is the metal piece? So we have a total of 6 different signs?
Yeah, and as far as that's concerned, and I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of the applicant, and I totally agree that this is not something that we should encourage. We need to have these people here. But really the signs on the tank, and there's also a smaller one, I think, kind of not a flag sign, but above the faux door on the Drexel elevation. I view that personally more as architectural rather than the primary mission of signage. So I think that you're certainly look in this building that you approved, in this cornerstone development that you approved, you're looking for an effect, an impact. And I think that signage, if done correctly, can add to that impact without looking garish. And in fact, Carrie mentioned that the size of the wall signs is actually less than which is allowable under our current code. So I think they are being sensitive to our requirements while at the same time maintaining some of their brand standards. And yes, this is a brand. I mean, they've got similar facilities in Milwaukee and in Delafield and Grafton, and all of them use that similar type of lettering. So we want to be certainly sensitive to their brand, but at the same time, getting a building that says uniquely Oak Creek. And I don't think that signage as proposed presents any problem for doing that. I think it's certainly scaled in such a manner that it works for the building.
Alderman Guzikowski.
Oh, one
Go ahead.
additional question. So what is acceptable according to our standards? Only the 3 sides and not the signs on the tank nor the north side?
No.
Okay. So what is approvable tonight
Yes.
would be the signs of the west, south, and east elevations. None of the signage on the north elevation would be approvable without a variance.
And what about the tanks?
That includes the tanks.
Okay, thank you.
And it's not approvable because of the signage on the rest of the building.
What the plan unit development says is that you can have 1 primary entry sign per entry facade. And also because this is a corner lot with, on Drexel and Howell, they are allowed 1 more primary sign facing either Drexel or Howell. And that either is the big word there. It's not and.
Done?
Need a variance.
Commissioner Dickman.
The word either, that's because of the PUD,
Correct.
But when I look at our sign ordinance, is that also in the sign ordinance?
The sign ordinance is, I would say that the sign ordinance is a bit more restrictive than what the plan unit development allows.
Okay.
Alderman Bekavich?
No, point was made, thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we vote on 4D? Motion.
Bekavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission approve the sign plan submitted by Paul Radenmacher for the Water Street Brewery property at 140 West Town Square Way with the following conditions. One, that the signs on the north facade are not approved. The applicant must submit a sign appeal request for these signs. Two, that the signs on the east, west, and south facades are approved. And three, that a permit application for the signs on the east, west, and south facades be submitted for review and approval by the inspection department.
Guzekowski seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Kroll, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
I would strongly suggest you have a live phone conversation with the applicant, make him aware that the process for the variance, so he's not going to be surprised by it, he knows what it's going to take, and he needs to be here when that comes up.
I will certainly do that.
Motion to adjourn.
Perillo moves to adjourn at 7:55.
Guzekowski seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Kroll, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday.